Leah stood on the viewing platform of the Arctic Research Station, her breath rising in soft clouds as the cold air touched her face. Above her, the night sky stretched wide and endless. Stars shimmered like whispers of the past. Behind her, the lab was quiet. Everyone had gone to rest. But Leah could not sleep. Not yet. The satellite footage from earlier still filled her thoughts. The same 3 lights had crossed above the Amazon, paused for 5 minutes, then vanished into the clouds. It had been the 9th sighting in 30 days. All of them followed the same slow, careful path. As if retracing something, she opened her notebook and flipped to a clean page. At the top, she wrote a single question. What are they waiting for inside the lab? Marek and Tatiana worked on decoding the final pulses from the frozen wreck. The pattern had changed slightly. The signal was no longer just 3 repeating beats. Now there was a 4th. Faint and slow. Tatiana listened to it again and again. She adjusted the frequency. It feels like breathing, she said. Almost like the ship is still alive, Marek nodded. Or dreaming. The metal beneath the ice had not rusted, had not shifted. Its surface stayed smooth, untouched by time. But now something deep inside it was responding. They believed it had noticed them. Leah joined them with fresh coffee. She looked at the signal closely. It's not a weapon, she said. It's not a warning. Marek looked up. Then what? Is it? She tapped the screen gently. I think it's memory. Just like the triangle lights, they do not interfere. They just want to remember us. Tatiana sat back in her chair. Maybe we are the ones being studied now, she said. That evening, Leah held one last team meeting. The metal sample was sealed. The research data was copied and sent to trusted global observatories. A secure report was delivered to multiple scientific bodies, not governments. Not military. Only those who would understand the message. Is not something to control, Leah said quietly. This is something to witness. They returned once more to the pond at sunrise. The ice had cracked wide in the center. Steam rose gently from the hole. The air above it felt still, almost too quiet. Leah placed a small sensor beside the opening. She knelt and whispered into the dark water. If you are listening, we heard you. And we will remember. They left the wreck untouched. No digging. No lifting. Just silence. Back in the lab, the signal changed again. This time, it stopped completely. The screen went dark. Then a new signal started. It was not a pulse. It was a single line of sound, rising and falling. Like a wave, Tatiana ran a translator program. The pattern slowly formed into simple symbols. Leah stared at it, then smiled gently. It was not a sentence. It was not a name. It was a shape, a human shape, a single figure, standing tall, arms at its sides, looking upward. They had remembered. They had stored the image of a pilot who faced them long ago. They had saved the feeling of being seen. The data from the wreck would take years to study. But Leah already knew what it meant. The pilots of the BF-109 were not forgotten for their battles. They were remembered for their courage, even in a time of war, even surrounded by fear and destruction. They chose to face the unknown. They flew into the sky, not only to fight, but to reach beyond the clouds. And someone noticed. Not just Earth. Something greater. That night, as the aurora danced above the Arctic station, Leah watched the sky again. She thought of Klaus Reinhardt, his broken plane. His last message, we flew not to win, but to be seen. Now they were seen too. Humanity had always looked upward, with hope, with fear, with questions. Now, somewhere in the vast silence of the universe, someone was watching back, not to judge, not to destroy, but to remember. Maybe one day they would return, not as visitors, but as witnesses of a shared sky. Until then, Earth would keep flying, and every human who looked up would carry the quiet echo of a story that began in war but ended in understanding. The story of why 93% of BF-109 pilots died was not just about machines or battlefields. It was about those few who flew beyond fear into the unknown and left a memory that would outlast the stars. Snow fell gently across the quiet forest near the Ural Mountains. The bunker behind Leah stood like a forgotten gate to the past. She stood outside, watching the sky turn pale with morning light. The final tape from Klaus still echoed in her ears. We flew not to win, but to be seen. Beside her, Merrick was quiet. He stared at the drone footage again, watching the shape of the triangle lights pass over the bunker. They were slow, peaceful, but also too perfect, too controlled. Tatiana walked up with a satellite image in her hand. She had traced the path of those same 3 lights from different locations across the past month. They're moving across Earth, she said. Same pattern, same shape, always 3 lights, never 4. Never 2. Leah studied the map. The lights had passed over oceans, cities, deserts, and mountains. Always slow. Always silent. They're watching, she said. Still, even. Now, back at their lab, Leah placed a small object on the table. It was a piece of metal from the wreckage under the ice. Merrick had managed to cut it carefully without damaging the structure. The metal was dark silver with a faint glow. It had no screw holes, no markings. But when they scanned it, the results were strange. The material changed slightly under pressure. It was hard as steel, but light as plastic. It responded to temperature without melting. Tatiana ran a deeper scan. Her screen flickered. There's a signal inside, she said. Not radio. Not magnetic. It's more like a memory. Like the metal is holding a pattern. They connected the object to a special lab reader. Slowly, images formed on the screen. Blurry at first, then clearer. Not photos. Not text up moments. The first was a view from high above Earth. Not from a plane, from space. The curve of the planet below, wrapped in blue and white. The second showed something more powerful. A field of stars. And in the center, a triangle shape. Moving through light. Not flying, floating, quiet. Leah leaned forward. This is their memory, she said. This is what they saw. One image made her stop. It showed a human plane. ABF-109. Floating in the air, surrounded by light. The pilot inside was calm. A soft glow touched the cockpit. The triangle hovered above, not attacking, not chasing. Just watching. Klaus Reinhardt. Tatiana whispered, they remember him. Leah turned to Merrick. If this metal remembers, she said, then the rest of the wreckage might too. They made a plan to return to the frozen pond. This time with better tools. Not to remove the ship, but to listen. When they arrived, the ice was thinner. It had started to crack. As if something inside was changing. They lowered a sensor into the water. It connected to the body of the object. For 10 minutes, there was silence. Then sound began to form, not a voice. Not language, a rhythm, 3 slow beats, then pause. Then 3 again, like a signal repeating. Merrick analyzed it. It's not random. He said, this is a pattern, like a code, maybe a message. Leah sat on the snow and stared at the sky. They left something behind, she said. Maybe not a warning, maybe not a threat. Just a message to remind us they came. And they saw, Tatiana nodded, and maybe they still see. That night, Leah returned to her room and opened her research files. She gathered everything. Klaus's logbook, the photos, the recordings, the metal sample. She began to write a full report. A clear timeline. In 1944, strange objects began to appear. The world was at war. The skies were filled with death. But in the middle of that chaos, something else arrived. They were not part of the war. But they watched it. They watched us fight each other, burn cities, build machines to destroy, and yet they did not stop us. They only observed. The German pilots were the first to fly toward them, not to make peace, but to confront the unknown. Most did not return, but a few tried to understand. Like Klaus. His final message was not about fear. It was about being seen, about standing in front of something far beyond Earth and showing courage. That message still lived inside the metal beneath the ice. And now Leah had heard it too. As she wrote, her screen blinked. An alert. A satellite had recorded the 3 lights again. This time, above South America. Still silent. Still moving, still watching. She saved her file and gave it one name. The wreckage still watches. She leaned back in her chair. Her eyes closed. She could still see the triangle above the clouds, not as a weapon, but as a mirror. A reflection of how humans choose to act when someone is watching from above. The Ural Mountains stretched across the frozen land like a sleeping giant. Cold winds moved through the valleys. Thick clouds hid the sun. This was a place where secrets stayed buried for a long time. Dr. Leah Morgan stood near the edge of an old Soviet bunker, her boots pressed against the frozen ground. Behind her, Marek and Tatiana worked quickly, clearing snow and dust from the entrance. They had come all the way from Geneva. What brought them here was not just curiosity, it was a mission. A final step in a path that began with a single pilot's logbook and a buried metal object in the ice. The bunker door was rusted, but still strong. With a loud creak, it opened. Cold air rushed out, carrying the smell of oil, iron, and time. Inside, the walls were lined with racks of damaged metal. Some pieces looked like broken airplane parts. Others looked like something else, smooth silver curves. Burnt fragments with no screws or bolts. Tatiana turned on her torch and pointed it toward the back wall. "There," she said. "Look." A large wing-shaped object rested on the ground. It was black and glossy. On its surface they saw the same triangle symbol, 3 dots inside. Leah moved closer. Her hand brushed across the surface. It was smooth and cold. It reflected. Her face back at her like a mirror. "This was not built by any country," she said. "Not in the 1940s, not even now." Marek pulled out a small device. It scanned the material and gave a reading. "No known match," he said. "The alloy is not listed in any database." Leah walked deeper into the bunker. Then she saw something that made her stop. A single chair sat in the corner. In front of an old radio set, and beside it, a metal case. She opened the case. Inside were flight records, handwritten, marked with the same date, March 4th, 1945, the date of the final mission flown by Black Flight Unit 93. Leah sat down on the chair and read the last page. It was written by Klaus Reinhardt. His handwriting was quick, as if he had written in fear. "We received the order just before sunrise. They called it Operation Gatterfall. Fall of the Gods. We were told to intercept 3 objects moving over the Baltic. We had no backup, no ground support, just our Bf-109s and the hope we could stop them. The sky was clear when we flew out. At first we saw nothing, then the lights appeared. Not bright, not fast, just floating. They moved in perfect shape. A triangle, not natural, not like birds, not like planes. They were watching us. They never fired. But they didn't run either." Leah turned the page. Her hands were steady, but her mind was racing. Keller panicked and tried to shoot. His bullets passed through one of them. No damage, no sound. A moment later, his plane caught fire. No explosion. Just fire. Like the air itself had turned against him. Keller screamed once. Then he was gone. I did not fire. I watched. The object moved toward me. I could feel it in my head. Like it was asking me a question. Like it was searching. Leah stopped reading. She looked up at Merrick and Tatiana. He felt something, she said. Not fear, not attack, something else. She read the final line. I understand now. They are not here to destroy. They are here to see who we are. And we are showing them. Only war. The entry ended there. No signature. No goodbye. Merrick looked around the bunker. There's no wreckage of his plane here, he said. He never returned. But his report did. Tatiana found her recording device under the desk. Old, Soviet-made, but still intact. They powered it on and played the last message. A young voice filled the bunker. Calm, tired. If anyone finds this, know that we did not fail. We were chosen to face what others could not understand. We flew not to win, but to be seen. To prove that humans will not turn away from the unknown, even if it costs us everything. The tape clicked off. Leah closed the case and stood in silence. The cold air moved around her, but she no longer felt it. She now understood the truth. Black. Flight Unit 93 had not died in battle. They had offered themselves in a mission far beyond war. They were the first to face visitors from beyond Earth, and they did it without fear. Outside the bunker, the sky had turned gray. Merrick pointed up. Look, he said. 3 faint lights moved through the clouds. No sound. No trail. Just light. Leah watched them move across the sky. They were not attacking. They were observing. Just like before. They are still here, she said. Tatiana whispered beside her. And they remember him. The lights faded behind the clouds. Leah turned back to the bunker. We have to share this story, she said. The world needs to know what really happened. Why those pilots never came home. Why they were sent. She looked at the triangle symbol again. They were not forgotten, she said. They were the first to carry a message across the sky. A message that Earth was not alone, and that when the time came, humanity looked up and answered. Leah sat in the back of the transport ship, staring at the frozen triangle in the photo on her tablet. The image of the object under the ice would not leave her mind. It had no wings, no visible engine. It looked as if it was built by a mind that did not think like a human. Beside her, Merrick was silent. He had reviewed the footage again and again. Each time, he stopped at the same frame. The final flicker of the triangle in the sky. The 3 lights. The way it turned just before disappearing, like it had noticed them. When they returned to Geneva, Leah went straight to the Historical Records Center. She used her security clearance to request hidden war files from Britain and the United States. 2 days later, an encrypted folder arrived. It was marked Eyes Only Operation Vesper. Inside were scans of handwritten letters, meeting notes, and telegrams between world leaders in 1944. Names she had seen in textbooks appeared in the margins. Winston Churchill, Franklin D. Roosevelt, Joseph Stalin, and one repeated message: let them handle it. Do not interfere. Losses are acceptable. Leah's eyes moved quickly across the pages. The documents revealed that Allied intelligence had known something was falling from the sky. Reports of strange lights, metal shapes with impossible flight paths, vanishing pilots, but instead of taking action, the Allied leaders had made a decision. Let the Nazis handle the threat. They would lose planes and men, but they would also keep the secret away from the public. Leah sat back in her chair. The room felt colder. The world had faced a silent threat and chosen silence in return. She kept reading. One telegram sent from London to Washington stood out. If German pilots engage these objects and perish, it is unfortunate, but perhaps they will buy us time. These visitors may not distinguish friend from foe. Leah read it again. Then she closed her eyes. The black flight pilots had not just died. They had been sent to intercept something no one understood, something no one was willing to face. She opened Klaus's logbook once more. I do not blame the enemy above. I blame the silence below. We are flying blind. But they see us clearly. Leah returned to her lab and gathered her team. Merrick stood beside the screen, pulling up a star chart. Look at this, he said. These 3 lights we saw match an old report from 1943. A pilot described the same formation over North Africa, but the military dismissed it as stress. Now compare the locations. He tapped the screen. 3 red dots appeared on the map. 1 in Germany, 1 in the Arctic, 1 in Africa. Leah leaned closer. They're forming a triangle, she said. Merrick nodded. And it's not random, he added. Each sighting happened just before a major battle, as if these objects were observing or predicting. Leah's voice was calm but serious. They were not just scouts. They were watching us fight, watching us destroy each other, maybe waiting for the right moment. A long silence followed. Leah stood up. I want access to Soviet war files, she said. If all 3 superpowers knew, then the full truth is split between them. It took 3 weeks, many calls, and help from a Russian researcher named Tatiana, but finally, Leah received copies of declassified Soviet reports. One document described a secret meeting held in 1945, just weeks before the war ended. The leaders of the Soviet Union, the United States, and Britain had met in secret, not to discuss surrender, but to discuss what had come from the sky. The report described a voice recording, one of the last messages sent by a pilot from the Black Flight. The pilot said he was above the clouds. He saw a silver craft the size of a small house. It had no doors, no markings. It floated silently beside him. Then it changed shape. It folded into a different form, as if space bent around it. The pilot's last words were clear. They are not attacking. They are studying us. I think we are the test. The tape ended there. Leah placed her hands on the table. Her mind connected the pieces. The war had been more than nation against nation. It had also been a cover, a distraction. While humans fought on the ground, something else watched from above. And the leaders of the world had made a choice. To keep the secret, to let the enemy in the sky meet the enemy on earth, and to say nothing. Merrick stepped into the room. He held a new piece of information. This just came in, he said. An old bunker near the Ural Mountains has been uncovered. It's full of damaged aircraft pieces. None of them match known designs, but one of them has writing on it. He handed her the image. It showed the same triangle symbol, 3 dots. Leah stared at it for a long moment. Then she turned to her team. We're going, she said. This story is not finished. And if the world buried the truth to survive, then it is our job to uncover it. She looked out the window as evening light faded into the cold sky. The same sky Klaus had flown through all those years ago. The same sky where 3 lights had floated, silent and patient. They had not come to destroy. They had come to understand. And maybe they were still watching, waiting to see what humanity would do next. The snow crunched softly under Leah's boots as she walked deeper into the forest near the Baltic Sea. Merrick followed close behind, carrying a portable scanner and a small drone. Their breath showed in the cold morning air and the trees around. Then stood tall and silent. It felt like the forest was holding its breath. They had been hiking for 2 hours. According to the old flight records, this area was near the last known location of Klaus Reinhardt's aircraft. Leah checked her digital map again. A small blue marker blinked in the middle of the screen. That was their destination. Merrick paused to adjust the scanner. A few soft beeps echoed in the stillness. I'm picking up something, he said. Metal, about 20 meters below the surface. Leah looked around. There were no signs of any crash, no broken trees, no burned ground. Just snow and silence. She knelt and brushed aside a patch of frozen moss. Underneath was a faint shape in the soil. A perfect triangle carved into stone. The same symbol from Klaus's logbook. 3 dots inside the triangle dot. She stood up slowly. "This is where it happened," she whispered. They set up the drone and sent it up into the sky. From above, the forest looked like an untouched ocean of green and white. But the drone's thermal sensors showed something hidden. A large object buried just beneath a frozen pond nearby. They made their way to the pond. The ice was thick and clear. Beneath it, something dark and smooth reflected the light. It was not a plain dot, it was round, silver, silent. Leah stared at it for a long time. Her heart beat faster. She had seen photos of enemy planes from World War II. She had seen fighter jets and stealth drones. But this was none of those. This object was shaped like a disc. No wings, no engines, no markings. Merrick took out a laser drill. "Should I try to melt through the ice?" he asked. Leah hesitated. Then she nodded. The drill began to hum. A bright red beam cut through the ice slowly. Steam rose into the cold air. As they worked, Leah opened Klaus's logbook again. She read the last few entries. "They told us not to follow the silver clouds, only to watch. But I saw it again today. It came from behind the sun. It did not cast a shadow. I fired. It moved before my bullet reached it." Like it already knew. Another line followed. There were 3 of them, flying in a pattern, a triangle. "I don't know if they are alive or machines, but they watch us. They always watch." Suddenly, the drone's signal broke. The screen went black. Merrick tried to reset it, but it didn't respond. "It's not a technical issue," he said. "Something is blocking it." Leah looked up. The forest was still quiet, but the air felt heavier. Then the drill stopped. A small hole had been made through the ice. Leah bent down and peered inside. She saw a symbol on the object's surface. Not German, not Russian. It looked like flowing lines, shaped like water or wind. She pulled back quickly. Her hands were shaking. "This is not from Earth," she said. Merrick stood beside her. He didn't speak. He was just staring at the object. Then they heard it. A soft hum in the air. They looked up, expecting to see a plane or a bird. But there was nothing, only clouds. But the clouds were moving strangely, slowly spinning, forming a shape, a triangle. Merrick pointed at the sky. "There," he said. 3 soft lights floated behind the clouds, pale and steady. No noise, no trail. They were watching. Leah reached for her camera, but it refused to turn on. All their devices stopped working. The hum grew louder, but it didn't hurt their ears. It felt like it was inside their heads. And then the lights vanished. The clouds returned to normal. The forest was silent again. Merrick turned to Leah. "What did we just see?" he asked. Leah didn't answer right away. She looked back at the frozen pond, at the hidden object beneath it. Klaus had seen them too. He had described them exactly. The triangle pattern, the silence, the speed. She finally spoke. "We saw what he saw," she said. "This is what they were fighting." Merrick looked pale. "They didn't stand a chance," he said. Leah nodded slowly. "That's why they never came back," she said. "They were not just pilots. They were the first line of defense." She placed her hand on the ice. "Whatever this is," she said, "it's been here for a long time. And it hasn't moved." They took samples from the area and packed up quickly. They didn't speak much on the way back. When they reached the lab that night, Leah reviewed the drone footage. Just before the signal cut, the drone had captured something, a flicker of light in the clouds. A shape. Not a plane, not a bird, a perfect triangle with 3 lights. And as it vanished into the sky, the last frame showed something chilling. The triangle turned for a brief moment, as if it was looking back, like it knew someone had found its secret. And now it was aware. A week had passed since Dr. Leah Morgan discovered the sealed Nazi vault in the Bavarian Alps. She now sat in her research lab surrounded by papers, scanned images, and pilot records. Her mind could not rest. Something inside her knew this story was bigger than just forgotten war files. Every time she looked at Klaus Reinhardt's logbook, she felt a strange chill. The entry spoke of strange flying objects, of missions no one returned from, of enemies not from Earth. Her next step was to search beyond the public archives. She contacted an old friend named Rafik, a cyber historian who worked in the restricted section of the European Historical Network. He had access to files most people never saw. They met inside a secure lab in Geneva. Rafik leaned over his screen and whispered to her like someone afraid the walls could hear. "I found something," he said. "You were right to be curious." There was a classified Luftwaffe program. Not much is written about it. Most of the data was destroyed. But a few pieces remain. It was called Schwarzstaffel. In English, it means black flight. Leah sat up straight. What kind of unit was it? She asked. Officially, they were test pilots, Rafik said. But none of their planes were returned to hangars. None of their flights were logged in normal records. They were always sent on missions over strange regions, Arctic zones, the Ural Mountains, Baltic airspace, places with little enemy activity. He paused and turned the screen to face her. A black and white photo appeared. 10 young pilots stood in a line beside their planes. They looked proud, brave, but their eyes were hard to read. This photo was taken in 1944, Rafik said. Not one of these men came back. No graves, no crash sites, no radio logs. Leah looked closely. One of the men wore a badge on his sleeve. It was a triangle with 3 dots inside. The same symbol found in Klaus's logbook. "Do you know what that symbol means?" she asked. Rafik shook his head. "No one does. But it only appears on files connected to Black Flight." Leah leaned back. Her thoughts raced. She opened a digital copy of Klaus's log again. One line stood out: that we fly higher each time. They told us to look for silver clouds that move. We are not fighting Britain. We are guarding the sky. She turned back to Rafik. What were they guarding it from? She asked. He took a deep breath and clicked a hidden folder. A map appeared on the screen. It showed recorded sightings of unknown flying objects between 1941 and 1945. There were hundreds. They called them sky visitors, Rafik said. Even the Allies had reports. But nobody wanted to admit it. So they let the Nazis deal with them. Quietly, Leah frowned. You mean to say the Allies knew too? Rafik nodded slowly. There are secret cables between British intelligence and American officials. They all agreed to stay silent. If the Germans wanted to chase these things, let them. Better the enemy lose their best pilots than risk public panic. Leah stood up. She walked to the window. Outside, a soft rain was falling. Her heart was heavy. 93% of Bf 109 pilots had died in the war. Most were young. Most were forgotten. But now she wondered if their deaths were not from dogfights. Not from mistakes. What if they were sent into the sky to fight something else? She looked back at Rafik. Can I see more flight data? She asked. He nodded and pulled up a chart. It listed dates, call signs, and final transmissions from pilots in the Black Flight. One line caught her attention. Date, March 4, 1945. Pilot, Klaus Reinhardt. Call sign, Iron Wolf mission, Operation Gatterfall. Final message, target visual. 3 silver crafts. Forming pattern, no sound. Approaching fast. I am engaging. The transmission ended there. Leah's hands tightened into fists. This was real. She asked Rafik to print the entire record. She took it back to her hotel room and spent the night reading every line. Every flight ended the same way. Strange object, no return. No wreckage. By morning, she had made her decision. She was going to find out where Klaus's last flight had taken place. The location was marked on one of the flight paths. A small island near the Baltic Sea. Cold, isolated, unexplored. She packed her bag. sent a message to her research partner Merrick, and booked transport. 3 days later, they arrived at the frozen shoreline of Estonia. The locals refused to go near the place. "There are lights in the sky there," an old man told her. "We don't go near it. The forest remembers things." Leah looked out at the cold sea. Fog rolled across the water like smoke. She felt the weight of her mission. This was no longer just about history. This was about the truth, and why so many young men flew into the sky during war and never came home. The world had told their families they died for their country. But what if they had died for the whole planet? Leah stepped forward onto the path leading into the forest. Somewhere ahead was the answer, and maybe the wreckage of something not made by human hands. She was ready to find out what the black flight truly faced in the clouds. The year was 2145. Earth had changed. Cities floated above rivers of light. Cars flew quietly through the skies. And deep underground, history still whispered from the ruins of the past. Dr. Leah Morgan stood in a narrow hallway carved into the Bavarian Alps, her boots pressed softly into dust that had not been touched in 100 years. A team of robotic diggers behind her hummed quietly as they scanned the walls. She was not an explorer. She was a historian. But Leah was no ordinary one. She specialized in forgotten wars and hidden truths. The vault she stood before had just been opened after 3 long weeks of drilling. Its door was marked with an old iron eagle and a faded swastika, the symbol of Nazi Germany. Leah adjusted her glasses and slowly stepped inside. The air was cold and dry. It smelled of metal, paper, and time itself. Inside were shelves stacked with crates, boxes, and old military cases. Some were sealed tight with wax. Others had rotted away. Her flashlight fell on an object covered in cloth. She walked to it, pulled back the cover, and revealed a rusted frame of what looked like part of a plane's cockpit. Strange marks were carved into the side. They weren't German. They weren't even human. Leah froze. She leaned closer. The symbols looked like a mix of circles, straight lines, and spirals. None of them matched any known language. She called her assistant. "Merrick, come here," she said. The young man jogged in and stared. "What is that?" he asked. "I don't know," she whispered. But this was inside a Luftwaffe vault. They took photos, collected the frame, and placed it carefully into a transport case. Then Leah noticed something else. On the floor beneath the cockpit part, a small book lay half buried in dust. She picked it up. The cover was cracked leather. It had a name, Klaus Reinhardt, and a year, 1944. Leah's heart beat faster. A real pilot's logbook. She opened it carefully. Inside were drawings of the Bf-109, the famous German fighter plane. But these drawings were not normal. They showed engines with 3 cylinders instead of 1. The wings had shapes that looked almost organic. One page had a sketch of a triangular object floating beside a plane, surrounded by lightning. Her fingers trembled slightly as she turned more pages. One entry read, "We were told today the enemy is not what we expected. They move like ghosts in the sky. I saw one. It had no wings, no sound, but it flew faster than anything I've ever seen. They told us not to speak of it." Another page read, "I do not know what we are fighting anymore. These are not Allied planes. These things, they are not from Earth." Leah stared at the page in silence. It was just a diary. Or maybe a WASN single quotes T. Later that night, back at the mobile research lab, Leah and her team ran the symbols through every known database. No matches. The engine design was impossible for the 1940s. She zoomed into one blueprint drawing and noticed a signature that didn't belong. A small triangular symbol with 3 dots inside it. Merrick came in holding another find. "You need to see this," he said. He placed a metal container on her desk. It was labeled in German. Inside were film reels. Leah threaded one into a projector and turned off the lights. The black and white footage began. A pilot stood beside his BF-109. He saluted the camera. The next scene showed the plane taking off. Then came shaky air footage of something in the sky. It wasn't a plane. It wasn't a bird. It was floating, smooth, silver. It turned in a perfect curve, and then shot straight upward like a flash of light. The camera lost it instantly. Then the screen went blank. Merrick spoke first. "That wasn't a plane," he said. "No," Leah replied. "That was something else." She looked back at the name on the pilot's logbook. Klaus Reinhardt. She searched. Old military records. No one by that name had returned from the war. In fact, 93% of BF-109 pilots had died in combat. Official history blamed poor training, dangerous missions, and the strength of the Allied Air Force. But now she wasn't sure. What if the truth was different? What if those pilots were sent to fight something else? Leah stared out the window of the lab into the dark night beyond the mountains. The sky looked peaceful now. Stars twinkled like cold diamonds, but she had seen what those old films showed, and she had read what that young pilot had written before vanishing forever. Something had come down from the sky during the war, and the world had buried it deep. But now, she had uncovered the first piece, and she was not going to stop. Not until she knew why so many pilots vanished without a trace. Not until she learned what Klaus Reinhardt saw in the clouds over Europe, and not until she understood what the world had been trying so hard to forget.